So welcome back everybody to the Kerry Writer Museum's festival funded by the Irish Arts Council. I'm so delighted to welcome you back, and I'm really enjoying the feedback that I've been getting with my cup of tea during the break. And now we're going to just have some feedback from you on any questions that you might have so far, any comments, or anything that you'd like me to explore in more depth. So Godfrey, how are you?
Yes, good. I would like to thank you for this because I've been feeling a little down lately and worried about tomorrow. But now I'm all enthused again and thinking of stories. And you mentioned Dovey Thomason.
Yes.
When was she here?
She was in virtual Tullycarnet. Was it Friday? I think it was Friday.
Thursday.
All days, or was it Thursday?
Thursday.
Thank you so much, Eamon.
Yeah, I am. One of the stories I'll be telling tomorrow is when I learned from her. Coyote Dances with the Stars.
Oh, Godfrey, I cannot wait to hear it. The ones that she told was the one about the anthill and how important ants are and that we're related to the ants. It's like I have to mind all the ants now. And the other one she told us was about the bear boy, the boy that turned into a bear.
Yes.
Oh my God, you know. And everybody else here now is going, oh, we should have been at that session. This is brilliant. Make sure to go to all of the storytelling sessions that you can get to, you know, because there's so much wisdom in them. And Godfrey, I cannot wait to tell stories with you tomorrow.
Oh, it'll be fun. And you were talking about stories that you made up with other people and with children, which reminded me of two of them that I could tell: The Bless You Man and A Turkey for Christmas.
Oh my God.
Both of those I made up with children.
Yeah. Oh, The Bless You Man. What a great name.
Well, that's not what it was supposed to be about.
Yeah.
But Zoe sneezed in the middle of us deciding what was happening next, and someone said, "Bless you." So that was in the story.
Oh, don't you just love that? You know, when the universe goes, wait a minute, I'm getting it all too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. Lovely feedback, Godfrey. Thank you so much, you know.
Mute is, we're on mute. Unmute means you can speak.
Yeah, you can speak now, Michelle, if you
Sorry. Sorry, I was asking my husband there. Let's unmute. I wasn't sure. Thank you, Maria. Sorry. Just I just wanted to ask you, Maria, you mentioned there at the end about an email. So would you send a list of all the sessions that are on, or the storytelling sessions that you know of?
I will, but I can tell you
some of the connections.
Absolutely, but I you know, kind of, I'm not so good at getting it into the messages right here.
Oh no, in email.
I'm going to make an email for all of us,
Perfect.
and I can put them in that. But for everybody out there that's listening, you know, kind of to this back as a recording, if you look up the Armstrong Trust and Liz Weir and Ballyeamon Barn, you'll find some of the best sessions going. And then we have Cork Yarn Spinners on a monthly basis. That's my home club. I love them so much. They just light up my life, you know. So the Cork Yarn Spinners. Then we have the Gab. The Gab is responsible for my first public storytelling, not as a drama therapist, but as a teller. So Mary Walsh and everybody at the Gab, hello to you, you know, and they're a fabulous storytelling club also in Cork City. And then I see DeBarra's is represented here by Ray McKinley. What a soul group of people they are. And they don't just do storytelling, but they do kind of a workshop idea as well. And at the moment, they're doing nourishing stories, and they're doing, you know, kind of personal stories, so personal wisdoms that have come into your life. So I really love the work of DeBarra's as well. So I will put all of those into an email.
Thanks, Maria. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. What a great question. And it means also that people that are looking back on this will be able to see that. And there's also a lovely storytelling group in Skibbereen, and they used to meet in the Time Pub. I can't remember the name. Ray, can you remember the name?
Yes, it's the Tanyard.
The Tanyard, thank you.
Yes, and it's a Skibbereen speakeasy.
Skibbereen Speakeasy, and they have a Facebook page and great hat. Great hat. So there's loads there. And then our umbrella organisation for storytellers in Ireland is Storytellers of Ireland. And they have a Facebook page, and it's two people walking together, chatting to one another, having a story. So Storytellers of Ireland, and they have a list of all of the storytellers that have signed up to them. So, you know, and all the different styles. There's so many different styles of storytelling in Ireland. Yeah. So, and then also I see the lovely Ken Parsons. Ken, can you tell people a little bit about St. John's and your monthly session?
How do you I off the microphone?
Yeah, it's working.
Working good. Oh, no, well, I know with the time difference, we're 3.5 hours ahead. But we have a monthly story circle, the second Wednesday of every month. And we have our virtual storytelling festival, which is happening the last Wednesday of every month. But to sign up or to get the Zoom information for any of that you check out St. John's Storytelling. The website is Storytelling St. John's, and that's St. John's with an S, .ca. And under contact, you signed up for our mailing list, and you'll be put on. We had a little bit of security issues the first couple of shows, so now the Zoom info only goes out to people on the mailing list.
Yeah.
But great, we usually get lately around 100 people.
Yeah. Actually, Ken brings up a great point there. In our innocence and enthusiasm at the start, we were just sending the Zoom links out on Facebook and social media, and then Zoom bombing started to happen. So we liaised with the police force, and they said, turn off your share screen and only send it out to your mailing list. So that's a great tip, Ken, for anybody who's deciding to put a storytelling group together, you know, to keep safe, and check in with the other storytelling communities, because we've all a little bit of experience now, and we're so willing to share it, and we love chatting to one another. So we're storytellers, you know. So
and one little thing that for the last Wednesday in October and November, we're still asking for submission for tellers, and that's a paid gig. And on the storytellingstjohns.ca, there's info there and submissions if anybody's interested in putting in a proposal, and we're looking for tellers.
Oh, great. Thanks, Ken. I'm sure there'll be loads of interest from here and from Ireland, you know. Can I just say that I've been to the St. John's Festival, or the St. John's monthly session 2 or 3 times, and it meant that I was up after midnight, and I loved it, and I would recommend going. So if you ever decide on a late COVID morning and a session into the night with a cup of whatever you fancy, ta-da, then I recommend St. John's. And you'll see why at our session this evening. So I'm really looking forward to that. So thanks for coming to the workshop, Ken. And then just to get back to what we were talking about earlier this morning, is there any takeaways? What's your favorite thing to take away? So
Maria, I can't see you, and I can't see a lot of other people.
Okay.
I can only see 3 people. That's Michelle, Ken, and Godfrey.
Are you on the phone, Ray?
No, I'm on my computer, but I can probably listen. So I might not be able to kind of participate as much as I can or should.
Yeah. Press the arrow. You see the arrow, Ray? Is there a blue arrow in your screen up at the top? If you press that arrow, you'll probably be able to see more people.
No, I think it's a problem with the computer actually, or the connection where I am. But I'll just quietly listen in. Okay.
Okay. I can see.
I can always ask you, Maria, anytime. You
absolutely, yeah. And I can see all 17 at the moment, so it's strange, you know. So, okay. So just so Eamon, yeah.
Yeah. Maria, well, there was a couple of things. First of all, Ray, at the bottom of the screen, in the middle, there's a row of dots. If you try touching them, it'll give you different different.
I've got you now. I've managed to work it out.
Okay.
The Digimagic has kicked in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, what I wanted to say, Marie, there's two things. A group that I've been involved with, and it's amazing. It's a really international group. The World Storytelling Cafe.
Yeah.
They have a Facebook page, and they do put stuff up on YouTube. But the storytellers from all around the world.
Yeah.
And it's a great crack to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And they have a little hat. So if people like to want to tell some stories and people like it, they can put money in the hat. It goes through PayPal. I actually got some money from Singapore.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it was mad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but the thing about the with storytelling, and it just struck me very strongly after what you were talking there earlier, how you don't realize the impact you can have on people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that sort of therapeutic background as such, but I tell stories up in West Belfast at Halloween, and there's a group of teenagers come along. Teenagers can be a bit of a pain. You know, they know everything.
Yeah.
But anyway, this group came along and they sat down and they said, "Would you tell that story you told us last year?" And I said, "Yes." So I told them the story. It's a story about a woman called Marjorie McCall who lived once and was buried twice.
Yeah.
So anyway, at the end of when I told at the end of the story, he looked at me and he said, "This one of these young fellows, was four of them." This young fellow looked at me and said, "Can I tell you that story now?" And he told the story in his own way, and it was really, really good. But he was so pleased about doing it. But what was lovely for me was that his three friends, and they're all 15, 16-year-olds, his three friends were just so encouraging. Yeah.
Oh.
And it's just that the young fellow felt really at ease telling the story in front of his friends, and they were so supportive of him. And it's just that sort of, I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, I just love those beautiful moments, and we're actually going to have a bit of a real live version of that now, because Listowel is also very nurturing, and they're bringing forward some young tellers this afternoon, and Francis will be hosting that. But Eamon, that just touched my heart, you know, so deeply. And I think of you know, kind of the kids that I've worked with, and they come across as really tough, and you know, and behind it all, they're actually kids, and they're, you know, they're not as brave as they're putting out to the world, you know. And I suppose that's an example of that, you know. And beautiful story, Medicine Eamon, lovely, you know. So thanks for sharing that. And I know that Sharon has beautiful experience as well, because we've talked about it before, of the older population when she does this thing called the Belfast Blitz. I never even knew that people were evacuated from Belfast. But Sharon, can you just tell us how those stories land with people, and how people have come up to you afterwards and connected with you on that, because it's important to know these things.
Yeah. Well, the Belfast Blitz monologue that I perform, it's based on stories mother told me when she was a young girl of 11, and she was evacuated then during the war. And I go around all different types of places to perform it. And what, you know, I love performing it, but the thing about it is I just absolutely love how it touches people and how their stories are valued, because often people will come and they'll tell me these most amazing stories about their experiences during the Second World War. But often they would say to me, "I really didn't think anybody would want to hear that story." And, you know, it's just lovely to hear them, and for them, you know, those stories and the people to be validated. And, you know, I have been so blessed just to be there to hear people firsthand telling some of the most amazing stories. And I think, you know, that it's valuable to encourage people to tell their stories. You know,
Absolutely.
often when I go out and do a session, of course, I'm there as a storyteller, but it is as important, if not more important at times, to hear the stories of the people in the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's back to two of these, one
Yeah.
of these, you know.
Right.
So yeah, so I know that Sharon does absolutely amazing work in different environments, and that's one of them, you know. But I remember one time when I was visiting the north of Ireland, Sharon brought me to a women's group, you know, and they wanted to hear uplifting stories. So I told the story of the greatest gift you can give to one another. So it's an old Jewish story about, you know, kind of the Great Depression, and a man who wanted to buy his wife beautiful combs for her gorgeous hair, and the wife who wanted to buy her husband, the talented musician, a bow for his fiddle, and how that happened, you know. And the women afterwards were like, oh my God, that's what, you know, kind of, you know, that's what religious love should be. It should be being there for one another, you know, and all these divides should be just, you know, put to one side. And that's what storytelling is about. It's about, you know, kind of connecting with one another, learning the wisdoms of yesteryear through the stories of that time, putting our own gloss on it, adding our own wisdoms, and, you know, letting them go forward into the future, you know. So we're getting some lovely feedback and some lovely stories about stories now, which is great. So I'm just going to ask if there's any more contributions, and if not,
Yes,
we'll do this.
I
Yeah.
have.
Oh, Daga, is it? Is that
Yes,
how you pronounce it, Daga?
yes, Toga.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for this session, first of all. And what touched myself in this session, this when you tell us the 6 parts methods, it was the first time I have heard it, because I'm a learner at the moment. I'm a learner of how to tell stories. So it touched me because I did it as you instructed us, and at the end of the story, the woman, there was a character, a woman, and the woman ended up doing, for example, learning a dressmaking, and she was in a position to earn some money for his husband. And in this moment in my life, I'm trying to find a course for me for a dressmaking, and I didn't think about it, but it came to my mind. So I understand. I really I want it. I didn't decide yet, but this makes me decide now, maybe.
Yeah.
So yes, it channeled. So it was the same that you talk about, channeling the character of ourselves.
Yes.
So,
oh my God, I'm so excited. I really want to follow that now, Daga, because you know, the instructions at the start of the story is that it has to be completely outside of your own experience and outside of you. And of course, because it comes from us, that's impossible. But the way we cast our net, you know, we can throw it far out to the end of our internal universe. And that's what you did. But then it came swimming back to you, and you found that this character wanted to make dressmaking her special power.
Yes.
So I'm like, oh, I'd love to follow that story now, you know. And that's bringing me to the next bit of today, and it's about storytelling community and storytelling peers. So for Daga and everybody else that's starting out in storytelling, it's really important that you have your story swaps and your play times where there's not an audience, you know, but you're just playing with a character. And I see a lot of my story peers that I bounce off of, you know, when I'm doing stories here, you know. So Ray, my story sister from Cork, and then there's Sharon, who I check in with quite often. There's Eamon, who saw the birth of my fox story at a workshop that we attended together. So Daga, the best piece of advice that I can give is find your storytelling family, and then the stories will flow, you know, and play with these tools. So these tools are not meant to be set in stone, because nothing in story is set in stone. And that is the next piece that we're going to talk about. But before I go on, because it's lovely to have the interaction, and Zoom makes us have it in these kind of chunks. So before I move on, is there anybody else that has a comment or a question? Claire?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really liked that you sort of emphasized what really young children, like 3 to 5 year olds, are capable of, because that's something that I agree with. But I think in general, these really young children are underestimated.
Yeah. So
I loved that you were like talking about, and I was kind of surprised at first that that method would work, but then I thought, well, actually, no, that does make sense.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say that there's a really wonderful book by a woman called Sue Fox, and it's called The Early Influences of Literature Upon Childhood. And in that book, she talks about the bard-like confidence of young children.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason that I really believe in it is because my parents had the foresight to record me at the age of 4.
Oh, wow.
And honestly, my most precious possession.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I just liked the fact that you brought that up, you know.
Oh, that's great, Claire, you know. And I'm thinking that one of the children that helped me make Grumpy Gobs is my grandniece. It was her nursery that I was going into. And I have her doing all of the voices and the faces. But because of Facebook, worries around children and Facebook, I lost it. I was like, where is it? I can't find my little recording, you know. And then I found it, and it was like a gift, because she's 6 now and she's like a different child, you know, because they you know, they grow in every way, you know, not just in their body, but in their attitudes, and, you know, so it's, and she still loves the story, and it's half her lifetime old now. So, oh, what a lovely feedback. Thank you, Claire. And I'm just coming to Godfrey. Yeah, Godfrey.
Yes, I just want to tell you one quick story about my experiences here in Listowel. I have been teaching a creative dramatics workshop for children. And the first one I did, I told the children a few stories, and they chose which one they wanted to make a play of. The second one I did, I had 5 4- and 5-year-old girls. And they were not impressed with any of the stories. And I said, okay, make one up yourself. And they did. They made this wonderful, we had 3 princesses, a search and rescue dog, and little Faye always wanted to be a knight. So she was a knight in shining armor, and I got to be the troll. But I thought, and then after that, the ones I did after that, I would tell them some stories just to get them going, but then they'd make it up themselves.
Yeah.
The one with the older kids, it was for Halloween last year, and there was a lot of murder and destruction in it, but I let them go with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Better, they say about that, it's better out than in. Better in a play than out there in the world.
Yeah, people got kicked to death and thrown off at the top of the Listowel Castle and got their head chopped off. As a matter of fact, I have the axe up there.
Brilliant, you know. And a lot of stories like that brings us to a really good point. And I'm really liking this conversation, so I'm letting it go on. And Godfrey, that's a really important point, because when I was training to be a drama therapist, they talked about Bethlehem. You've probably come across him. And he used to translate the Grimm's tales, but he said you should be able to translate them but not clean them up. Because he said the whole reason for the Grimm's fairy tales was you could experience danger but not be affected by it. So let me say that again slowly. You could experience the danger of a situation and get all the learning and the wisdom from that without being affected. you know. So, and that brings me to, you know, the cleaned up language with children. Children are symbolic thinkers. So Claire has said that today. It's been my experience with children, and Godfrey has also touched on it, you know. So they think in symbols and they see pictures in their minds. And if they're wanting to tell you something that's difficult for them, they might say, oh, Mom, he was dangerous like the big bad wolf. But if they've never heard that story, they don't have a frame of reference, you know. So there's a reason that we tell children, inverted commas, scary stories, and it's to give them the language about being able to tell us when they're scared or afraid, you know. So what a great point, Godfrey, you know. And I think it's really important that we get to play with those dangers in a safe environment so that they don't leak out in real life, you know. So yeah. Any more in the conversation? No, I think that's it. We've come to the end of it. I've loved it though. I think this kind of conversation, I'm wanting to do more of it after this, because this interaction between us is where the real learning is. It's not in the lecture style of handing over the information that you've just gathered yourself, you know. But I'm going to go back to that style just for now. So let me see. I just have to do the old spotlight thing there again. So here we are, back from our lovely break and our gorgeous conversation. And yeah, oh, and I forgot to mute everybody, so I have to do the old mute thing. No, I'm actually wanting to mute, not mute all. There we go. No, there we go. So now everybody is muted, I think. Can you have a look at that for me as well, Lizzie? So the next part of the story is the really magical part of storytelling, and in drama therapeutic terms, that's called magic dust, and to all children, it's just called magic. And as adults, sometimes we forget it. So when I was training to be a drama therapist, one of the things that we had to do was talk about our morning. So we might say, I got up and I had a shower and I had a beautiful cup of Barry's tea, and then I put on my makeup and my clothes and I came out, and the first person that I spoke to was Lizzie, because she was the person that was opening the door. And that is the normal way to tell things. But then when you tell this to somebody, so for example, say I was working with Godfrey and I told this to Godfrey, I'd ask her then to sprinkle some magic dust on that. So she would take my story and, you know, sprinkle some story magic on it, you know. So she might then ask me some questions. Well, what was the best thing about your morning? And I might say something like, oh, the shower, because I was totally asleep until I went into the shower and then I felt better after that. And then she might say, okay, and what was the second nicest thing about your morning? And I might say, oh, the cup of Barry's tea. There's nothing like Barry's tea. It reminds me of Cork and home, and no matter where I am in the world, the tea bags come with me. And she might go, okay. And then she might say, and what was the, you know, the thing about transitioning from that place to being here with me now? What was it that brought you here completely? And I might say, oh, it was meeting Lizzie coming in through the door, you know, and as soon as she closed the door, that was it. I'm sitting here in your company. Now that does a number of things. It makes me think more slowly. So remember we talked about pitch, pace and pause. So it makes me think of the way I just go, this is how my morning was. And I give you a messenger list. And it brings me into how I felt about my morning. What were the things that made me feel the best? So there's an emphasis on what were the best things of your morning. There's an emphasis on that. And that's going into the resilience part of us. And then it was what brought you here. And up to that second, I mightn't have been fully here with Godfrey. I might have been thinking about, oh, I have to get chops for the dinner, or, you know, kind of, oh, there's another workshop on tonight that I'm going to. But as soon as that question is asked, what they're really asking is, can you land here, please? Can you be here with me? And I might have said that the person closing the door was what made the space for me to be here, you know, but in the action of saying it, I land. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. So now Godfrey would have enough to be able to make a bit of magic with that story. And I know that Godfrey works in this way because of the conversation that we've just had about the kids. So she might come in with a plan and they might say to her, oh, we want to write our own story. And then what does she do? She lets them. Okay, so she's already got a mind that is thinking this way anyway. So if I said to Godfrey or any of the storytellers, now I want you to put a bit of story magic on Maria's morning, chances are you'd get a story that was different for the number. So if you had 7 storytellers, you get 7 different stories, you know. So if I go back to my example and I say something like that to Godfrey, the story that she might come back with was, we always start our stories with once upon a time, because that puts them into the magical place. So they don't belong to this time, they belong to once upon a time. So we might say something like, once upon a time, there was a girl called Maria, and she was stuck to her bed. She just wanted to stay there. She was so cozy, so warm, but she knew that she had to meet Maria. So she peeled herself off the bed and she got out, and she was so heavy, walking along to the shower. And then she could hear the singing waters calling her name. Maria, come into the shower, Maria. And she thought, oh, the shower is calling me. I can't wait to go. So in she went, and the water was like a magic mist. It came down and it touched her on the head first, and her hair woke up. And then it touched her on her face, and her eyes woke up. And then it touched her on the mouth, and she started singing songs, la, 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 la. And her day had begun. And she got out to the fluffiest towel, and it was so cozy. And she immediately felt better. And then when she went downstairs, the kettle was singing, your tea is ready, your tea is ready, your tea is ready. And it gave her a beautiful cup of steaming tea. And when she put her hands around the cup, it felt like a hug. You know how a hug feels? Lovely and warm. And she took a taste of the tea, and it went down her throat, and it made everything coated in something like honey. And her song just got sweeter. And then it was time to go and meet the group. And Lizzie was at the door. And Lizzie always has a smiling face. And Lizzie said, you, Maria Gillen, you're so welcome. Come on in. Come on in. And Maria did. And Lizzie closed the door, and the day began. So do you see the difference between I got up and I had a shower and a cup of tea and to making it into a story? So if you practice that in your story groups with your story peers, it starts becoming almost like a second language, and it becomes very accessible. Do you know who has that language so accessible to them? You know, so if you do, put up your hand. Very good. So I'm going to unmute Godfrey because that was the first one. So asking Godfrey to unmute.
Mute.
Oh, there you are. You're unmuted.
There I am.
So who is it? Who has access to that?
Children.
Children. Absolutely.
Children.
Unfettered
I've worked with them
access.
for 20, I was a preschool teacher in America for 25 years.
Yeah.
But besides being a storyteller all my life.
Yeah.
And they come up with the best things.
The most magical things.
Yes.
And Claire is actually nodding her head there, so I'm just going to unmute Claire as well, because I think this is an important conversation to have, you know. So so Claire, you mentioned Sue Fox, you know, and there's another Sue, and I can't remember her surname, but she's a drama therapist in the UK, you know, and she would hark back to Sue Fox as well, you know.
Yeah.
And isn't it just amazing that they have no barriers? So what did you say? You said the bard?
The bard like confidence.
Bard like confidence.
Such a lovely expression, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's so descriptive.
Yes.
And it's just what you say about these kids are blessed because they have no inhibitions.
Absolutely.
And I've often thought, actually, I often say when I'm doing storytelling workshops that for me, I had to sort of reconnect with that 4-year-old.
Yes, exactly.
Because when I was in my 20s and I was starting to try and tell, I was absolutely petrified.
Yeah. So can I ask you, how did you reconnect? These are the interesting bits now.
Well, actually, it was, I worked in Craigmillar, which is quite a deprived part of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And I had been appointed to do this job on the basis that I would try to do some storytelling. At that point, I was more of a listener.
Yeah.
And I went to a class of primary 4s here, 7 years old, and got about 2 sentences out of my mouth. It was one of Duncan Williamson's stories.
Oh.
And the children were just like saucer eyes, you know.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, it was just effortless.
Yeah.
But you see, the other thing that I've often thought is, you know, that connection that you get with the child. Well, do you know what I think it's most similar to is that intensity of connection that a mother and baby have.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Duncan Williams, you know, can you tell everybody here, most of us know, but can you just tell us about Duncan Williams for the, you know, for this tape that will be a part of history, because Duncan is amazing. Over to Claire.
I was so lucky because I moved to Scotland in 1992. So I got to hear Duncan many, many times, got to visit him in his home in Cooper. He took me out to the fields and we found these carrots that were the most huge and tasty and nutritious carrots that I've eaten in my life. So and actually one time I went with him to Cape Clear. I was his kind of like manager.
I love Cape Clear.
Yeah. So I was so lucky. And you know, he's got, but also I must say this, we need to also credit Linda Williamson, his wife, more than is done ordinarily, because without her, we would not have had him.
Yeah.
Because she was the one who brought him into the light.
Oh.
She was the one who recorded his stories, and she has done an extraordinary job because she's a musician. When you read his stories, if you knew him, you actually hear his voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she did it so diligently. She's written in Scots.
Yes. So the rhythm of the stories are held. Yeah.
And the cadence, everything.
Yeah.
So
and
yeah.
the music of the Scots lilt is in there, you know. So Claire, what tradition does he come from?
The traveller tradition.
The traveller, yeah. You know, the magical traveller tradition. And there's so many wisdoms in the stories. I mean, Ruth is the person that I would have heard a lot of the stories from, Ruth Kirkpatrick, and I've attended her workshop as well, which was amazing, run by the Armstrong Trust during COVID. So we've so much to be thankful for, to the likes of the Irish Arts Council and the Armstrong Trust for funding these. But I remember the story she told about the woman who didn't have an awful lot and then had nothing and had children and had to go to a neighbour and ask for help, and then the mice. So Claire is going, I know, you know. So if you want to hear that story, you're going to have to go to one of the Scots storytelling sessions and ask for it. And it's a Duncan story, you know. So
that one is actually Sally Robertson.
Is it? Oh my God! There you go. You know. So
Mally and the Trowery.
That's the one.
In fact, Tom Muir in Orkney has recorded it.
Love Tom.
And it's on. He's got it up on somewhere. He's got a whole channel.
Oh my God! So for everybody watching this, you're getting a treasure trove now of where to go for stories. So that's Tom Muir, who's amazing, and also appeared in Belfast on one of the yarn spinners. Actually, it was Liz Weir's Ballyeamon Barn yarn spinner session that Tom Muir came to and told stories at. And then he has his own blog up as well. So isn't it really worth our while having these conversations, you know? So I'm kind of deviating away from the Zoom, I must give a workshop mode, to having story conversations, because it's so important to look at the wisdom that's here. So really important to ask those questions. And thanks for coming in, Claire and Godfrey, on that one. So we were talking about putting the magic dust of story on the everyday. And what I would say to you, if you have your paper and pencil next to you, is to ask somebody, how did they start their day? And then try putting some of the story magic on it yourself and telling it back to them, and watch their face and see the wonder of a child come back into their face, because they could be like, yeah, I did this and this and this, and I read my newspaper, and then you put a bit of story magic on it, and suddenly their face changes into, yeah, you know, and suddenly they realize, oh my God, the shower was the most important part of my day because it woke me up. The cup of tea was the next most important thing. Thank you for asking me the question, or I wouldn't have known that. And the first person I spoke to today was Lizzie, and she smiled at me. Isn't that great? You know, so it makes you connected back into why things happen, not that just things happen. Does that make sense? Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was stereotype busting. Dun, 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 dun. So in college, they told us that it was the liminal space, the space where everything melts, you know? So that's technical language for you can change the ending. That's the technical language for, hey, you can change the ending. So the stories of long ago, the storytellers of long ago, both in beautiful Scotland and Ireland, would change the story depending on what county they were in. So for example, if a storyteller came to Cork, they'd say, the best county in the whole world is Cork. And if they went to Kerry, they'd say, come here, the best county in the whole world is Kerry, you know? So that's just a small little example. But also, they might change the stereotype to give the role that they wanted to give all of the power. Let's look at that. So there was a raging debate on Cork radio, and the debate was, we shouldn't be telling those Disneyfied stories of Cinderella and Snow White because it disempowers women. As storytellers, I would say we should tell those stories, but make those women powerful. Change the middle of the story, change the end of the story. Once upon a time, there was a girl, and her name was Snow White. And the reason she was called Snow White was because she was never white. She was always covered in muck and dirt and daisies and bits of grass hanging out of her hair. And so, for a joke, her friends used to call her Snow White. She was the warrior of the tribe. They followed her everywhere. And hence the story changes, you know. Or you could change the end. And the end could be, and so Snow White cut down all of the sharp hedges and rushed through. And then she climbed the big stone wall. She fought the dragon and the 40 snakes on the bed where her prince lay sleeping. And then she climbed up on the bed and she looked at him and she thought, no, I'm not going to rescue you today. I might call back tomorrow. So when you put that story in the hands of teenagers, that's the kind of story they come back with. And we all end up rolling around the place laughing and having a great time and smashing to death all of the unhelpful stereotypes. So I call it stereotype busting, but if you're studying drama therapy in college, they call it the liminal space, the space where everything melts. So, you know, it's the old people would say it's not rocket science. It's a big load of common sense. If the story doesn't fit you, change the story. Change the story. You know. Now I want to look at the kind of stories you listen to. What do you watch on television? What kind of films do you go to in the cinema? What attracts you in theatre? You know, and for a second, maybe write down your top 3 favorites. What are you watching at the moment? An example for me at the moment is I was watching Designated Survivor. I loved it. You know, so what are you watching? And I'll give you 30 seconds. Come back. And now, what do you like about them? What's the top 3 things that attracts you to this story right now? It's always interesting to ask ourselves that. What need is being met from that story, that book, that film, that piece of cinema right now? And as I have you in the thinking mode, I pull you out of the thinking mode. Okay. So what we feed ourselves is very important. If we feed ourselves fast food, look what happens to our body. If we feed ourselves unthought about information, if we just watch the news every day at the same time, you know, if we watch unthinkingly something, it's like eating a meal but not being aware that you've eaten that meal, and so you might get hungry again, or you might need another piece of entertainment. How often does what we watch make us sit and go and think about things? Or how often does it touch our heart? And here's a question. When was the last time you looked at something or read something or experienced something that was really uplifting, that totally met your need? When was the last time that happened? And who delivered that? And how did it touch you? What stories are we telling ourselves? Okay, so now I'm getting a little bit conscious of time. If we have time, I might come back and ask you for an input on that. But the next piece that I wanted, the next tool that I just wanted to explore with you is the idea of the facets of a diamond. That a human being has all the different facets of a diamond, and that intellect is only one. And that sometimes there is an emphasis put on intellect. So if you're in school, what part of you is valuable? If you're in work, what part of you is the part that's valuable to that organization more than the other parts? And if you exercise one part of your body above all the other parts of your body, what happens to that part and what happens to the other parts? So that part gets bigger and bulkier and tends to be the first thing that you see, and the other parts kind of get wasted and invisible and smaller, don't they? So if we think of a person as in the idea of a diamond, there comes a theory called piles, which is physical, intellectual, language, emotional, social, and spiritual. Interestingly, this idea came from child development, but now has come into the corporate sector. You know, so when you're telling stories, receiving stories, how do you receive them? Do you receive them in your intellect, in your emotional self, in your social self, in your spiritual self, in your physical self? For me, storytelling is everything. You know, I'm physically engaged, I'm intellectually engaged. Language is a very important part of storytelling. You know, my emotional self is having a field day, it's having a dance around the park. You know, socially, it has been a lifesaver, a life belt during COVID, but ever before that, it is a beautiful social bridge, storytelling. You know, and spiritually, it connects us with the ancestors. It grounds us in the present. It allows us to put our mark on the future. We're doing it today. This is being recorded for the Kerry Writers Museum. So today, we're putting our thumbprint on the future by being in our present in locked down COVID through story. So I find that just thinking about where I'm affected over the spectrum of piles tells me where that story fits for me right now. And sometimes that story might have a different fit next week. So a story that touches me in my heart today might be something that I think about next week. Does that make sense? Yeah. And therefore, how I tell that story will be very different. So if I'm telling that story when it's brand new, it's raw from the heart and the emotions can be very near the surface. If I'm telling that story from my mind to impart some wisdom or information, it's a very different story. I'm sure you've experienced that as well, you know. So I just find the piles model is a very good pulse for me to take on my own storytelling. Where is my story affecting me right now? You know. So let's have a little hark back then to the medicinal story. So that's the story that we're looking at today. We're looking at story as a resilience tool, as a resilience model, you know. So the medicinal story, what part of the person it reaches and through what tools. So today we've explored catharsis. We've explored the 6-part story. We've explored channeling. We've explored rewriting stories and playing with the middles and the ends of stories. And we've looked at changing historical roles by how we tell stories. We did that with the fairy stories, you know. And then we talked about the community of stories, and we had loads of beautiful input from Godfrey, from Claire, from Eamon, from Ken, from Ray, from Sharon, you know, on how storytelling touches the human being part of us, you know, and offering, you know, doorways into their storytelling, into the different festivals. I love the idea of the word storytelling cafe, a world storytelling cafe, you know, and I love the idea of passing the virtual hat. so that you can, you know, it harks back to the very early troubadours, storytellers going from place to place, and they were fed by how good their story was, by people taking some of their meager coins and sharing it with the storyteller. You know, what a beautiful idea. The storytelling cafe, you know. And then we looked at how we lock ourselves down. So as a child, we have all the tools we need, you know, to access the magic part of story. We have no problem adopting roles. Yes, I'll be the fireman, you know, or I'll be the princess, or I'll be the princess fireman, a princess and a fireman. You know, there's just no barriers. And how we train ourselves out of that, how we adopt rigid roles, you know. Oh yes, I am a teacher. Oh yes, I am an operations manager. Oh yes, I'm a policeman, you know. And not, the dot of that is and nothing else, you know. So in the Irish language, we would often say something like, Tá ocra sorum, the hunger is upon me. And I notice how Ray brings that into her English language. She will say that something is upon me. The fear is upon me. The happiness is upon me. The sadness is upon me. But it's not all of me, you know. So if you put I am, it becomes all consuming. If you put the I am before your sentence, I am happy. So therefore, I cannot be sad. But we can be happy and sad. So the happiness is upon me, and a little bit of sadness too. Isn't that an easier way of, or a softer way of expressing the truth, you know? So the language of a storyteller is important, and how we allow that information to sink in is important. And as I'm walking through the world at the moment, I see one of our biggest gifts and treasures to impart is slowing the pace, slowing the crazy pace. And we do this in the pace of our speech. So pace is a really important part of storytelling. You know. So now we're at 12:30, and now I'd love to open up the conversation again. So I'm just going to unmute everybody again, or allow you to unmute yourself. And I'm going to go back to our gallery view, and I see that Dawn has her hand up. So Dawn, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can now, if there's a question you'd like to ask. Okay, so maybe that was a question for the earlier part. So now I'm just going to say, did anything there strike a chord with you? Because now we're coming to the really deep stuff. So was there anything in that, the magic dust of storytelling, the stereotype busting piles, the medicinal story element?
Hello.
Hi, Dawn.
Hi. Sorry. Sorry for that. I have a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm working off two machines.
We're all in the same boat, so it's brilliant. Thank you for coming in. Yeah, thanks for coming in.
So it's a laptop and a tablet that I'm trying to work off of, so that's why. Yeah.
So did you have a question?
Yeah, well, just a couple of things. It was from the previous conversation that you had a little while ago. First of all, I wanted to ask, I noticed your copy and your pen, and I just wanted to ask, are they from the Cork Safe Haven Toastmasters Conference?
Yes, they are.
Because I was at that, so I'm actually writing my notes with the pen, and I have the notebook upstairs.
What a
So,
lovely connection.
yeah, so it's actually quite crazy how you end up interacting with people at events that you were at, because I went to the storytelling was on the was it on the Friday night or the Saturday night? There was a storytelling section in one of the rooms, and it was brilliant.
Right. I was chairperson for that.
Oh,
yeah.
were you? Oh,
Yeah.
right, yeah, it was excellent, and it's actually funny because I was on an event for a comedy workshop by a guy who runs it out of the States, and there was an Irish girl on it who had done a comedy workshop with a guy I did a comedy workshop with last year. So this is a fantastic forum for meeting with people. Yeah. And then what I wanted to ask was when you gave the first lines of a story there, I find with storytelling that people will start it and it starts, these emotions start to, come up inside of you, and you start thinking of all these ideas and memories and stuff.
Yeah.
And that story you had about the Jewish couple, I think it was, in the Depression with the boat. Where can I find the rest of that story? Because I want to know what happened.
Oh, right. I can't remember what it's called in the Jewish tradition, unfortunately, but I think that Godfrey might. Godfrey, it was the story where the young woman was working in Macy's and she was gathering all her money together and she didn't have an awful lot of money. So she asked her husband what would he like, and he said, oh, the bow on my fiddle is getting old. And he said, I'd love to get you some lovely combs for your hair. Do you have any eye on certain combs? And she said, oh, the ones in Macy's window, and his heart fell because he didn't have an awful lot of money either. And then he ended up selling his fiddle. Do you know that story? And she ended up.
The version I know of it is by O. Henry, I think, The Gift of the Magi.
Yeah.
Gift of the Magi. There you go, Dawn. So if you look that up, because I don't really want it's a beautiful story, and I've heard it as a child, but it's also part of the Jewish tradition. So I'm very, very cognizant of telling stories that belong to another tradition in a public forum. I'm very happy to tell them, in an intimate setting and say, this is from the Jewish tradition. And also with Native American stories as well. We have beautiful Native American tellers, and I love their stories so much. And I follow a number of tellers, and we have our own because the Choctaw tribe sent a famine aid to Ireland in the 1800s, and I have a story about that I'm actually be telling tomorrow. But I think it's if the story is being told by that tradition right now, and it kind of belongs to them, then when I'm on these sites all over the world, I'm kind of thinking, well, that's their stories, and I tell our stories,
Oh no, that's fair enough. I know, because I can look it up myself. I know it's not part of the workshop. I was just curious to look it up myself, So
that's the only reason. Otherwise, I'd be very happy to tell it. And if you're ever at a storytelling session in Cork Yarn Spinners when COVID is over, I will tell you that story, not a bother. And I know that Godfrey will be telling us a beautiful Native American story tomorrow, but she's from America, or you sound as if you are from America. So that is part of the tradition that they would have inherited and heard growing up as well. And it would be like, there was a beautiful, I watched the Late Late Show yesterday, so this brings up a really beautiful point, and there was a gorgeous Black woman singer, and she'd experienced some tough times, and she was talking about that. And the Lord Mayor of Dublin is from, she was born in Dublin, but she's Chinese, so she's got a dual.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah.
Did you see it last night? It was so interesting,
No, but I've seen that lady. Yes, the Lord Mayor. Yeah, but I haven't seen the Late Late.
Oh, fantastic! And she said like I grew up in Ireland and I learned the same histories that you did the same maths and English, and she would have heard the same stories. So she's very within her rights to tell Irish stories.
Yeah.
But she would have heard Chinese stories from her mom and dad. So she's well
Yes.
within her rights to
Tell
tell
them
those
too.
as well, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the blending of stories, you know, I've done a lot of work, intercultural work, and I'd imagine Godfrey has as well in the past, you know. And it's lovely for them to hear my stories, for me to hear their stories. But when we make new stories with a blend of both stories, that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah.
I love that,
Exactly.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just
I'm gonna
just
come to
one
Godfrey.
last very
Yeah.
just one very quick thing when you were talking about the children and
Yeah.
how they think in symbols and pictures and that. It
Mhm.
actually reminded me, my mother tells the story of when my brother was small and he'd come to her in the morning and he'd say, "Mammy, I saw pictures last night," which meant that he was dreaming.
Oh my God, isn't that lovely? Oh, I just love that, John, you know.
Yeah.
Would
So,
that we all had our little pictures to talk about every morning now, you know.
exactly. So yeah, so that ties in. That must be why he used to use that phrase instead of saying "I had a dream last night." Yeah.
Absolutely, because he was talking about his symbols, you know. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
so I'm just coming to Godfrey there. So
Yeah,
Godfrey,
no problem. Yeah, thank you.
yeah, thanks, Dawn.
Okay, now I need to be careful because I could try to take over this whole conversation. That's what I'm like.
Yeah.
But you were just talking about stories from other traditions. Now I tell African stories. I grew up in the San Joaquin Valley in California. We had Africans, we had Mexicans, we had Hmong and Chinese and Japanese, and all of these people are a part of me.
Yeah.
And I'm
Great.
so happy to see that beginning here.
Yes.
When I lived here 30 years ago, it was just us white folks. But one of my favorite stories I was reading in Joseph Jacobs' Celtic fairy tales, the tale of the Sprightly Tailor.
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking, that sure sounds like something that probably happened to my grandma back in Oklahoma, but she forgot to tell me about it.
Ah.
So I'll be telling the story tomorrow of my grandma and the monster in the graveyard.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it. Is everybody coming to Godfrey's session tomorrow for the children? Yes. I see the fingers. Yes, definitely, you know. So we'll all be there. I have one or two stories, but Godfrey will be telling, I think I have two at most, Godfrey, but you'll be telling most of the stories at that session tomorrow. And
Okay, I wondered how that was going to work.
Yeah,
what if I don't remember anything?
You will.
I'll make it up as I go along.
And if you don't, I was going to say, and if you don't, change the story.
That's right.
Change the story, you know.
I've done that on stage before.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, people say to me, "You've told the same story, but it has different details." I say, yes, because I don't learn stories off. I see them inside my head on the internal projector.
Stories change with the audience.
Yes, they do. Thank you, Godfrey. Because of what is called the red thread of story. Stories are living things, you know, and that's why they touch us, and they're happening in the moment, and they're relational, you know. So stories change, and they can change in the moment, and they can be and are influenced by our audience and by the zeitgeist about what's happening in the world. I'm noticing the different threads and patterns of stories that are being told at the moment, and how we are going towards the light-hearted and the entertaining stories, and how that's badly needed. And I'm looking back in history to see where that happened before, because it's interesting to do that. And Disney became a big player in the 1940s after the war, because people needed colour and happiness, and they needed to be uplifted, and we're there again. So, you know, it's lovely to hear the stories that are uplifting, But the other thing that you'll notice is the other stories that were very popular at the time were the why stories. Why aren't we learning from history stories, those stories, the why stories? This has happened before. Why did we not learn from it? So the why stories are coming up again. And we talked a little bit about those when I was talking with Claire, you know, and she was talking about Mali. What a great name, Mali, you know. So we need to tap into our wise stories. A huge story that's in the zeitgeist at the moment is the Emperor's New Clothes. And the young boy that said, he's not wearing anything. He's not wearing anything. We need that young boy right now.
Oh, we do.
Yeah. And that is a zeitgeist story. Story medicine, you know. Imagine exploring that story in this group. And what we could do with that, you know.
Yeah.
So, but we're running out of time, unfortunately. So I'm just looking at our next session is going to be the young tellers, and I'm just going to come to Lizzie, because Lizzie, I don't have my timetable with me. What time is the young tellers on?
It's on at 2:30.
2:30.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are, Frances. It's on at 2:30. And the fantastic Frances is going to be at the head of it. You know, and what I really want to acknowledge here, Frances, is Listowel and Writers Week and the fantastic opportunities that are presented down there for this. Like, I mean, storytelling, singing, music is held like treasure in Listowel, and I love going to Listowel because of that. So I'm going into my own happy memory store now, but I remember sitting in a hotel in the early hours of the morning, and Frances walked in, and the most beautiful singing and story session started. Do you remember that, Frances?
I do, many of them.
Oh, many of them. But that one in particular, I really needed it that day.
Yeah.
Do you know, it really hit me. So, you know.
Even the small hours of the morning, you know, these sessions with the stories,
Yeah.
there was order.
Yes.
There was maybe chaos out there in the background, but people were, they had to hear the story and they had to express themselves in song or poetry or, you know, and even our friends Don't Push the Chair.
Yes.
There was silence, you know, like.
God almighty, it was amazing. So that was at the healing hour, and I was present for that, Frances.
Yeah.
And you couldn't hear a pin drop, you know. It was just...
We did it in the hotel in the small hours of the morning, I think, one night as well.
As well, yeah, yeah.
Couldn't hear a pin drop.
Yeah, it was amazing, you know. And I love how people will look around. They look around and they'll see who can be the mammy or the daddy of the session. And in Irish, they call that banatee or farantee. So banatee is the woman of the house and farantee is the man of the house, you know. And on the sessions in Listowel, they'll always look to Frances and make her the mammy of the session, you know. And then they'll be going, who's next? Who's next there? No, Frances, you know. And she'll call on somebody and there could be a heaving pub. I mean, heads going like this, you know, a heaving pub. And she'll go, order now. And the next person up is Ray McKinley. And then Ray might go, I'm a bit shy about my story. And everybody will just go. It's like magic, Frances, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And then off they go. And then Frances is in the opposite role when she goes to Milltown Malbay. So there's a Farity up there. I can't remember his name now at the moment, but he runs
Michael O'Brien.
Michael O'Brien. Oh, yeah. And then he might go, Frances Kennedy now will tell a story. And the whole, so up there, we all know our tellers so well that there's a different welcome. So if, for example, Stephen was up there, they'd all go, hush, now, you know, and then Stephen would take the middle of the room. But when they say Frances Kennedy is up next, everybody goes, yay!
They all duck their heads.
You're going to laugh now, you know, kind of stuff. And there's a completely different welcome for Frances, you know. So I love that as well, you know. So there's a whole language around storytelling, you know. So be sure to go at 2:30 to the young tellers, because we need to nurture the next generation. And there's an awful lot of next tellers on this session as well. Daga is one, you know, and there's an awful lot of tellers that are starting out, and there's a lot of tellers that are making their living at this. So we have a beautiful mix here, a lovely little fruitcake of, you know, kind of the different levels of storytelling, which is fantastic. One of the things that I've seen storytellers make use of, people like Ruth Kirkpatrick from Scotland, people like Frances Kennedy down in the bottom left of my screen there, and is singing, you know. So people will change, they'll colour and they'll change the background of a story with a tune, you know. They lift it, they'll bring it down. It's beautiful. So if you have old songs that you can weave into your stories, it's a great gift as well, you know. So lads, I'm going to call this to an end in a very few minutes, but I'm going to give the last word to our lovely group. And I'm just wondering, I'm seeing if I can type here. I can. I'm going to put in my contact details here. So if you haven't given me the email address, if you could please get onto me and give me an email address, and I'll send an email out to everybody that has attended today. But we really need to do what everybody else in the world is doing, and we need to get feedback. So if you could leave a review on the Kerry Writers Museum of the events that you've been to, I'd really appreciate it. They'd really appreciate it. And our wonderful funders, the Irish Arts Council, would be very happy that their investment was worth it, you know. So if you could do that, I'd really appreciate it. And I have put on there my Facebook Seeds of Story. So if you could leave a review there as well, I'd really appreciate it, because I'm trying to build it up at the moment. So I'm going to put that in our chat. So it's up there now in our chat. And if you'd like to leave a comment, I'm going to open the chat to everybody now. So let me see how to do that. Chat.
Maria, I think Helen wants to say something.
Oh, sorry, Helen. I can't see Helen. Are you there, Helen?
Yeah, I'm here. I just unmuted.
There you are. Yeah, I can see you now.
Can I just thank you so much? I won't delay you now. I just want to thank you so much for the session today. And I'm just finished doing a course with Radio Kerry for radio production. So I'm interested in the digital side of things and storytelling and documentary making with, you know, with audio, with radio. Yeah. And so it's not just about, you know, standing up, and obviously the most fabulous form of storytelling is to be able to do what most of you guys there can do, to stand in a room and totally enthrall people. But I just wanted to say I'm coming at it from a radio point of view, and I found today absolutely excellent. So thank you so much for your time, and lovely to see you all on here.
Oh, thank you, Helen. Helen, a phenomenon of COVID has been the podcast. So there's been loads of podcasts. So I've been this guy arrived to me with microphones and a computer, and we had a chat over the desk, and that went out on a radio program in Ulster. And then also there's the storytelling podcast that go out on Spotify. So that would also be without a screen, you know, so very radio-like, you know. And what I really loved about that is that they did a little bit of this. Why is the story important? And we talked about that, and then told stories, you know, and I really like that. And those are the kind of podcasts that attract me. So I listen to Daniel Allison's, which is based on that format a lot. So I'd recommend maybe listening to House of Legends. House of Legends is the Scottish storytelling podcast run by Daniel Allison, you know, for the radio. And you're right, and thank you for bringing it up. Storytelling is not just about, you know, kind of a storyteller and a room full of people. It's also about books, about television, cinema, you know, and it's important to state that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, Helen. So anybody else?
I had fun.
Good. I'm really glad you had fun. Yeah, I did too. I had great fun. I was a bit nervous because I was like, how is this going to work with screens? But you've been amazing. What a great audience. Thank you.
Maria, can I just say,
Yeah,
can you hear me?
I can, Michelle. Yeah.
Just say that just it was amazing. And just as regards, I'm an avid attendee of Listowel Writers Week, so many of us look forward to Frances every year. I just want to say that she's
I love her. Yeah.
amazing in the you know, at the Healing Hour in John B's, and of course in the hotel. It's brilliant. But just with the COVID also, obviously, you know, all this is at an end now, and as well as Writers Week, I also would go to a lot of the rambling houses. So it's wonderful to get all the all the sessions now, where to go to and what to see online, because, you know, this has just brought me back now to, you know, what it's like to attend Writers Week, and just to even, you know, we're all doing it here online, but it's just been absolutely amazing. And to meet everybody from abroad and everything, I feel like it's just a normal, you know, that I'm attending. So it's really lifted me this morning. So it's brilliant. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. And I just want to add my thanks to that, you know, that we found this system. And, you know, never did I think I'd say, thank God for Zoom, but thank God for Zoom, you know. And then I looked back at, I was actually in Glasnevin for Culture Night last night. And then I looked back at the Kerry Writers Museum opening session. So I was watching that until 1 o'clock this morning. And like you say, Michelle, I felt I was there. Like when Frances got up to tell her story, I was like, woo! And I love Sonny. Sonny's just, I love Sonny, you know. And then the music. And what I really loved about the Kerry Writers Museum, and what I've been having problems with, is my tech, you know. So they have this beautiful facility with great microphones, and the music sounded as if I was in the room. Whereas sometimes on Zoom, if the guitar is being played, you can't hear the voice, or vice versa, you know. So I'm really hoping that Kerry Writers Museum will run their own session that we can attend on a monthly basis now. So I have my favorites, and I have to tell you why. And I'm saying that because the characters in Listowel are outstanding, and the talent is just out of this world. And if I could live in Billy Keane's pub at the Healing Hour, I'd never leave. Yes. Amazing, you know.
Amazing.
Yeah, so thank you for your feedback, Michelle, you know.
Thanks so much.
Eamon.
Maria, could I just say to you, I'm almost stuck for words, which is very unusual. Because I just found this session, I find Zoom quite difficult, to be honest now, but I found this session so wonderful. Like Ray used the word magical, and it was emotional, but the amount of learning was wonderful. And the way you just facilitated the whole session in such a beautiful and gentle way, and just with so much wisdom. It's a real honor to be a part of this. So thank you so much.
Oh, I just love Eamon's heart. Thank you, Eamon. Thank you so much. That was lovely. Yeah.
Maria.
Yeah, hiya, Ray.
Maria, thank you. Not only has my storytelling changed, but I think it's affected my whole personality and how I see life out there.
Yeah.
The soft whisperings. Thank you.
Oh. Mwah. Thank you yet again, Ray. Ray is one of my bunkers. We tell stories together and we play. I love playing with Ray, you know. So that inner child stuff, Ray is the person I have that with. I just love it. Yeah. Thank you for coming, Ray. Yet again. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
I have a word.
yes, Gaga.
I think one of the advices you have given me was, I think, to practice and story pairs. So I leave this session and today with a lot of learnings and also some things to apply. You know, I think I will look for a story pair now, maybe, yeah, to practice more. Yes. And if you don't mind, I'd maybe get in touch with you sometime, you know, to find my way again, you know, maybe finding a story pair or maybe asking some story families, you know, people. Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely, I'd be very honored. Please make contact. That would be great.
Okay, thank you very much for everyone.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Maria?
Sure. Yeah.
Maria, I just want to say a deep, deep thank you to you because for sharing your wisdom. And I just can say you're a gift to the world, Maria.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I value everything that you say and just your whole being, Maria. So thank you so much because today I just needed this. So from the bottom.
Yeah, me too. I needed it too. So thank you. Yeah. Yeah. You know, so I want to say, like, you know, how the storytelling community works. So Sharon actually invited me to give a workshop in her home one time, and a number of people came, and we just had a beautiful 2 days, and we made gorgeous stories together. And the thing about delivering storytelling workshops, because I was an ops manager who delivered training, and this is not like that. Storytelling workshops are about connecting and making communities, you know, and I feel like very strongly that Sharon is part of my Nordy family. We have a Nordy house in Cape Clear, you know, that I look forward to every year. So I found in this work, you know, as opposed to the other work that I've done in my life, that these people become family, you know. I mean, I had a beautiful experience where I went to Northern Ireland, and Eamon Keenan said, I know you're going to be interested in this. And he brought a carload of us to see a fairy tree, and we were hugging the tree and leaving gifts for the tree and taking photographs of the tree. And now we're looking back on those, you know, when we were at the Glens Festival, and we're saying, we can't go this year, but we have our photographs and we have our memories. And we have the beautiful heart of Eamon bringing us to that very ancient, important fairy tree. So if you ever get a chance to go to Northern Ireland, you know, it's not about going to the tourist sites. It's about knowing where the fairy trees are. You know.
And there's even a bed here, Maria.
Always. And the same, that's the other thing. You know, kind of so many storytellers have come and stayed with me in my home in Cork, you know, and I've been in so many storytellers' houses. So, you know, so yeah, this is definitely learning of the heart. And how do you learn in the heart? You play. Let's play with one another, you know. So on that note, I'm going to be murdered if I don't stop, because it's 1 o'clock and I have to leave people off so that we come fresh to Francis Kennedy and the Young Tellers at 2:30. I can't wait to meet you all again at that. And don't forget to leave a little review on Kerry Writers Museum and on Story Seeds.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.